So the next topic we're going to be dealing with in geometry is the area unit, right? So, and so unit 8 is going to be area. And so we start with a circle because, hey, you guys have been doing circles for a while, so things you probably already know about circles. If you draw your circle, by the way, you might hear Moose in the background. I have to do this around him so that he just won't cry. Oh, there he is. Hold on. Who's standing on the computer? Okay, we're back. And so I actually didn't hit the button right because I got distracted by the dog, and I just did a whole bunch without having you guys here. So let me go through and talk about what I just did and show you. So, okay, so before we were talking about a circle and the radius of r, okay? Some things you may or may not remember, right? We have circumference, which is the perimeter of the circle, okay? You may or may not remember that the equation for circumference is 2 pi r, okay? And you've done that in the past, right? Back in middle school, I know. Right, but that's just a reminder, right? This circle stuff, it begins with a lot of review. So then the circumference, another way of writing it is pi times the diameter, because remember that the diameter, right, if that's the radius, the diameter would be this all the way across right here. Okay, and that the diameter is twice the radius, and right, the diameter has endpoints on the circle, right? Endpoints are on the circle, as opposed to the radius, which has endpoints on the circle and the center, right? And it also passes through the center, the diameter. So the diameter's endpoints on the circle passes through the center. Also worth noting, and you definitely want to highlight it for yourself, is it's twice the radius. Okay, that's highlight worthy there. So you should be highlighting this, and that the diameter is twice the radius. The other thing you may remember from years past is the area of a circle, and that formula is pi r squared. Okay, right? Again, highlight that one so you can find it. Remember, area is the space inside the circle, basically how many squares you can fit inside of it. Right? So it's measured in square units when you do it. Right? That's how we measure area there. So these are all things that you've done in the past, and hopefully you still remember from the past. Okay. So if we were to do some examples here. Okay, of applying this, right? So let's start with C. C, the radius is given as 12 inches, right? So what do? Well, I started by drawing out my circle for myself, and I drew the circle with a radius of 12 inches there, okay? And once I had that radius of 12 inches, I said to myself, okay, what's the diameter? Well, we just remember the diameter is twice the radius, right? So I drew that diameter in as twice as much, and I put 24 inches right there, okay? Then I used my formula for circumference. My formula for circumference, I could use either one, 2 pi r or pi times diameter. It doesn't matter which one. Right? I used pi times diameter because I have the diameter. So I just took pi times the diameter, and I just write 24 pi inches. Okay? Now, some people say, well, should I put that on my calculator? No, you shouldn't. It says leave your answers exact. Exact meaning don't round. Another way of thinking of it is don't use a calculator for it. Okay? Don't put that in the calculator. So if you're trying to say, like, all right, where's the pi key in my calculator, then you're not doing it right because it says the answers are exact there, and you should just be done. 24 pi inches. Okay? When I do area, I'm going to use that formula, pi r squared, and I just plug the radius. Now you got to be really careful. Make sure you use the radius here, not the diameter. Some people accidentally do that. So it's pi times the radius squared. So order of operations tells us to square the 12 first. Right, get the 144, and then multiply by pi, and then we have square inches here, right? Okay, so it might change which label you have, like whether it's inches or meters or centimeters or feet, but it's always going to be square units for area, because area is measured in squares, right? If you look at like a tile floor, you'll see that it's made up of squares, and that kind of reminds us, like, the space on a tile floor is squares, right? Because it's area that we're measuring there. Okay, if we're going to measure how long something is, like a radius or diameter or the perimeter of the circle, that's measured in inches. So you just use a ruler to measure that. We can't use a ruler to measure area, right? Because it's the number of squares you have in it. Okay, so that's why it's square inches there. Okay. Now, at this point, right now, I've gone through one example. Maybe you remember this. Maybe you try B, C, and D on your own, and then you check back in with me right after you try it, and then check my answers. Okay. In B, the diameter was given of 14 centimeters. So what did I do? I drew my circle of 14 centimeters as the diameter. Notice I put the 14 right in the middle, so it's clear it's the whole thing. Well, since the diameter is twice the radius, then that means each of these pieces was 7 centimeters. So I did that next. Okay. At this point, I found my circumference using my pi times diameter formula. Pi times the diameter, 14. 14 for the diameter, 14 pi. Okay, not using my calculator because it said in the directions, leave your answers exact. Right? This is the exact answer, no rounding. When I did area, I took the radius, again was careful, right? Plugged the 7 in, not the 14, squared it, 49 pi, square centimeters. Right? Still the square units, but centimeters this time because the original was centimeters. Okay. In doing C, it was a little bit harder because it started with the circumference. So what I did is I wrote out my circumference formula. Circumference equals pi times diameter. Okay. Now the difference is, now we have the circumference, so I replaced the C, right, with 7 pi. Right? Why? Because it told me it was 7 pi. So I put that in. 7 pi equals pi times diameter, divided both sides by pi. So I got 7 as the diameter. And remembering that if I think about it, okay, there's my circle, there's 7 as the diameter. Okay, so the radii are going to be 3.5. Okay. Go into my area formula, plugged in 3.5 as my radius. Okay, 3.5. Remember, exponents first, 3.5 squared, 12.25. Okay, and then times pi, so 12.25 pi square meters. Okay. Now, if I'm going to do the area one here, okay, so area, remember that formula is pi r squared. So you pick out the formula you're going to use first. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 formulas, right? But since it's area, there's really only one to use. Okay, we know my area is 16 pi. Okay, so now we know 16 is our r squared. Okay, what squared gives us 16? 4. We've been doing that all year long, right? So hopefully, right, you can do that pretty quickly. My radius is 4. Okay, if my radius is 4, my diameter is 8. And don't forget my circumference is pi times the diameter. I already have the diameter given, so I'll have 8 pi feet. Okay, so there's my answer for those. Okay. So these are a bunch more like that, right? Everything is going to be a little bit different. Okay, and since these ones are a little bit harder cases, okay, we're going to skip some of them, right? We're not going to go, we're going to skip some of these, right? Just because we're not doing it in class, we'll skip a couple, okay? So I'll X out the ones that we're not going to do. So if you're going to try some of these on your own here, right, the ones that I'll X out are going to be, what we're going to do instead is we're going to leave our answers both in exact form and round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, we're just going to round to the nearest hundredth. Okay, we're not going to worry about the exact form. Okay, because we're not doing this in class, and I know that's a little bit harder to do the exact form. Okay, so we're just going to do the round to the nearest hundredth. So if I'm looking at this, I have 8 pi. That's my area. Okay, that's 8 pi. Okay, just like I did before, divide by pi, divide by pi. So we get 8 equals r squared. Okay, so now I'm going to have to take a square root of both sides. Okay, now I'm changing my mind here. Okay, that one we can definitely reduce, right? We've been doing that before. 4 and 2, so we get 2 root 2. Our radius is 2 root 2. Okay. Double it, remember, so when you double it, you're multiplying the by 2, so that's just the coefficient, so that's what's going to be 4 root 2 inches, and then circumference is diameter times pi, so 4 root 2, and then times pi inches. And I'm really careful to make sure that pi is at the end there. Okay, so A will leave an exact form. Okay, another one we're going to leave an exact form is C. and the other ones will round, and rounds. Okay, they involve a little bit more math for it, right? So we're just going to round those off. Okay, so if you're going to try some of these on your own going forward here, right, this is how we're going to leave all of our answers for the rest of them. Okay, so if you want to try some, name point, pause, right, and then I'll go through the video. Right, I'm going to stop this video here, right, and then pick up from there later.